Hi class, welcome to the second installment of lecture videos for today. This is going to be a quick one just to guide your interpretation of a few selected scenes from The Matrix that you're going to analyze in today's discussion board post and connect it to the ideas of the week. Now by this point you should have already read about The Matrix and completed the attendance quiz for today, so you should already be familiar with what The Matrix is about. You know that it takes place in the future in a dystopian society. I think this is a great synopsis of the high concept for The Matrix. This is definitely a high concept film that a hacker who is Neo, Keanu Reeves' character, learns his world is a virtual reality simulation run by malevolent machines, evil machines, artificial intelligence, and joins a group of super-powered revolutionaries, that's this group here, aiming to tear down the system being the Matrix itself. And free your mind is the slogan for the Matrix, meaning that you should take the red pill and become aware of the limits of your mind, be aware that you have been plugged into the system your whole life, escape from it, and then achieve a greater sense of freedom and autonomy. Now, for any of my philosophy majors or minors or just philosophy enthusiasts, you might have noticed that there are some connections between the concept for the Matrix and the allegory of the cave, or Plato's cave. Now, that was intentional on the part of the filmmakers. Now, I wanted to just summarize a couple important things, remind you of a couple important things, that by the time we reach the 1990s, Hollywood film is no longer a single product, just the celluloid film existing in a single space of the movie theater and having a singular market. Now, films are really a very large production that involve a lot of ancillary markets, of a lot of merchandise, and especially music. Music is now its own entity that can be marketed separately from the film, and they can make a lot of money from the music that is in the film. So it becomes extremely important for the concept of making more money and making blockbusters. Now, Don Davis is the composer of the original orchestral scoring in the film. There is both original orchestral scoring and a compilation of pre-existing rock songs in it. Now, for composers like Don Davis, film music becomes more sonically driven and percussive. He uses more of a techno-rock style of orchestral scoring that makes it difficult to distinguish between the music score and the layered digital sound effects that it's associated with, and connects it to this technological world that is the diegesis of the Matrix. So it helps blend with a compilation album of also these director-selected pre-existing rock, electronic, and heavy metal singles. But because it is still this orchestral music, it fills in some gaps and adds a seriousness to the style of the film that would not be accomplished if all we had were rock music. So I think the orchestral underscoring adds something different, contribute something different to the film than does these pre-existing rock songs. But I think the rock songs help reinforce the style of the film. Obviously, having really heavy metal and rock songs, that's very different than some of the pre-existing selections we were seeing in, say, Footloose or Flashdance, which were much more pop-oriented and light-hearted and romantic. But with The Matrix, these are really heavy metal, really intense music, not the most popular mainstream music, but it matches with the style of the film and even the color palette that we see here. So there's a couple scenes that I want you to focus on to analyze the difference between this orchestral scoring and then what this compilation album is adding, and tie it into our ideas of this MTV music video moment and how that relates to action sequences. This is a very action-packed film, so there are a lot of action sequences that follow this general format that you can analyze. The first one is the opening scene. This sequence is a very high, fast-paced action sequence that features Trinity, the female character here. She's escaping from some police officers and also some agents who are the sort of artificial intelligence humanoids in the Matrix. And the music in this sequence is all Don Davis's original orchestral underscoring, so there isn't any pre-existing heavy metal singles in the opening scene. What we hear instead is a lot of very frenetic piano passages. This music's very atonal and intense, with an emphasis on percussion, swelling brass with a very rhythmic quality. And the music pretty much Mickey Mouses the action, that when there's moments where Trinity stops running, there's sort of suspense of what's going to happen next, and the music stops as well and starts back up, synchronized with when the characters start running again. So have a watch to this scene and try to note these things, and take some notes on your own impressions of the scene and the editing pace and how it relates to the MTV moments we've discussed and how that's influenced action sequences. The next action sequence I'll have you look at is the famous lobby shootout sequence. Take note of the timestamp here, that it starts at 1 hour, 41 minutes, and 5 seconds. You'll notice as they enter into the lobby, there's some percussion hits that, again, almost Mickey Mouse the action of the characters. And then this single spy break begins and continues throughout the shootout sequence. Now, this is a pre-existing electronic track by the Propeller Heads, which is an electronic duo. And in some ways, I think you can see that when you watch this, that the fight sequence is reminiscent of some of the dance sequences that we saw before, that it makes sense to have these sort of MTV bubble moments that feel almost like a music video in some ways, where the narrative flow stops, but instead we focus on on-screen action and some activity that the characters are doing. There's a extremely visual spectacle, and the choreography of the fighting is in some ways, I think, a bit dance-like, makes it suitable for this kind of musical treatment and editing pace for the same reasons that dance sequences in Footloose or Flashdance worked as well. And finally, I'll have you look at the ending, and the ending segues into the credit sequence. As you first hear Neo speaking on the phone, you hear original orchestral underscoring by Don Davis. The strings and the brass swells. And then there is a sync point, meaning the on-screen action changes, and then there's a change to the music. It transitions with a specific on-screen sync point to this Rage Against the Machine song called Wake Up. This is a pre-existing single, as you see, many years before The Matrix, which is 1999. So this was something that was not created for The Matrix, but that the director said, oh, this is the perfect song to end the film, to tie everything together. So note the sync point, what happens on screen that makes this song start. I'd like for you to consider why this rock and heavy metal style is appropriate for the film. What is it adding to the overall brand of the film? And then I'd like for you to consider the band title, Rage Against the Machine, the title of the song itself, Wake Up, and then look up the lyrics. You can just Google the song and then look at the lyrics and consider how they relate to the film's premise, the concept for the film. Why is this such a perfect song to end the film? Even though it was not designed for the film, it was composed many years before, and it can be applied to this film, and the lyrics can relate in a really interesting way. Okay, so enjoy watching those scenes. After you do so, you'll compile your thoughts into a discussion board post, and then I highly recommend you take the red pill and you watch the entirety of the Matrix movie. If you have some free time the end of this week or this weekend, this is really a classic. If you have not seen it yet, it is such an iconic film, and it's part of a trilogy. So if you have a lot of time, watch the whole trilogy and consider what these action sequences, how they function, and the importance of music and making them work, and the various contributions from the original orchestral underscoring of Don Davis versus the heavy metal and rock singles. So look forward to seeing your thoughts, and hope you have time to watch the entire film, but if you don't, just these 3 scenes will give you an idea of how these concepts work in the film.